Welcome to the Journey of Champions podcast powered by SportCirqls. I'm Helgard and I have with me Matthew. Welcome, Matthew.
Thank you for having me, Helgard. It's a privilege to be here.
At the Journey of Champions, we are talking to champions from various sports and learn from their journey, what it takes to get to the pinnacle of sports. Today we have a guest who is a real up-and-coming sports star. He has represented New Zealand in the under-20s, who won the Rugby Championship in South Africa in 2025. Welcome, Harlyn, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
Harlyn, we're going to start from the start. Just tell people on how we met and how this came about that we're actually having this podcast. And so the first time I met Harlyn was at Botany Down Secondary College sports prize giving. And that's where my son attended, and Harlyn had to do he was one of the keynote speakers for the night as an ex-Botany College student. And that's how we met. Or met informally back then, but then since then, Harlyn, your sister and my son plays in the same touch team.
Yeah, that's right.
And since then, Harlyn and I have been scouring the touch sidelines for hours on end on Saturdays, watching the under-16s play, and they've actually finished 4th in New Zealand this year, which is they've done quite well. Harlyn, but coming back to you, you were born in Levin, but you grew up in Auckland. Now, can you tell us a little bit about what was growing up in Auckland for you like, and how did you first get into rugby?
Yeah, that's right. Yes, I was born in Levin. Levin's a little place at the bottom of the North Island. That's where I'm from. And I was there until the age of 2, and then I actually moved over to Australia. I spent most of my childhood in Australia, actually, from the age of 2 till about 10. So I did most of my primary school years there. And then at the age of 10, I was put in the care of my auntie and uncle who live in New Zealand. And, I still live with them to this day. So I've spent the last 10 years with them. And yeah, how I got into rugby was pretty much when I moved over to New Zealand to live with my aunt and uncle. Before then, had no prior experience of sports or anything. I was a little bit of a chubby kid, unfit, and coming over, my aunt and uncle made a real point to care about my health and chuck me straight into rugby. So that would have been under 13s. So I think that was my year before going to high school was my first year at first exposure to rugby. So a little late if you compare to most kids growing up in New Zealand. But yeah, that's where my rugby journey began.
It's interesting that you say that it's a little bit late compared to some kids in New Zealand. That's similar to South Africa as well, where I grew up. You start at a very young age and you start to play rugby and you know all about rugby. But there's been some stories in the last couple of years, right through, like from France. I can't remember the player's name, but basically he got introduced to rugby when he was 22, and by the time he was 23, he played for France. So it's not always the case that you have to play a sport from a very young age to actually progress in the sport. But talking about that, if you think back of your early years during school time, you said you started when you were under 13. Now, was that at Pakuranga Rugby Club?
Yeah, Pakuranga Rugby Club was the under 13s Cadillacs team. That was my first ever rugby team.
Now, for those listeners who are not familiar with the setup here in New Zealand and Auckland, Pakuranga is a rugby club out in East Auckland. And they've got quite a big junior program. The last time I checked, I think they were like the biggest junior club, participation club in Auckland or in New Zealand. And they do quite a lot for juniors, Pakuranga. It's a lot of volunteers. So looking back at that, and then you moved into high school, you moved into Botany College.
Yeah.
And I just want to clarify this to the viewers as well. Over in New Zealand, at primary school, you play rugby for club. And then at the age of 14, under 14, you move into your what we call colleges in New Zealand, which is your high schools. And then you start playing for your high school. Now, during those years, Harlan, can you identify some family members or some coaches or just some teammates that had a big influence on your career or on a big influence on you as a person?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's three main people that stick out for me. The obvious answer is obviously my auntie and uncle who've raised me. They've taught me all my values in life and stuff like that, and real pushed me in rugby. But if I was to, I guess, name a singular person besides them that has really, influenced me, and I would say is a big reason for where I am today, is my first 15 coach, Logan Fui. I met Logan on the day before my very first day at high school in year 9. And yeah, started training with the first 15 straight away. That's I guess the thing about being at a bit of a smaller rugby school. They're real big about family. So straight from the beginning, all the rugby teams were trained together. There was no all mixed together and that. So I got to meet Logan, and Logan's always been he's a real special person for me. He's a real father figure in my life. He's always pushed me to be better. He's always coached with love. That man's got so much love in his heart, and he shares that around to everyone. If you're in Logan's presence, you just feel supported. So yeah, I've grown to have a real good connection with Logan over the years. And yeah, I love that man to death. So yeah, no, if I were to say someone who's really influenced me and pushed me to get to where I am today, it would be Coach Logan.
Now, I'm just going to elaborate a little bit on Coach Logan because it's an amazing testimony that you just gave for Coach Logan. But I can second that because my son started playing at Botany when he was year 9. It was a lot younger than you, Harlan. But from the moment he stepped on the field and Coach Logan took preseason training, and it's where the first 15 and the juniors all train together. And the amount of respect he treats every single player that crosses that white line, he treats them with the utmost respect, and he's got time for every single one of them. And so yeah, I've got nothing but respect for Logan. And Logan and our history goes back a little bit longer. I used to coach his son Damien when Damien was under 12 and under 11. I used to coach him, and I used to teach him back in the day when I was still a teacher. I used to teach him, and I guided him a little bit towards botany as well. So I didn't realize it until Coach Logan mentioned it to me and said, well, because I introduced myself to Logan the first time I met him. He's like, no, our journey starts way back. And yeah, so now I've got the utmost respect for Logan and what he's done at botany. Now, you're saying that you mentioned that you come from a smaller school, a smaller rugby school. Do you think can you tell me, do you think there's benefits of coming from a smaller rugby school than attending some of the bigger rugby schools in around New Zealand or in Auckland? Do you think there was any benefit to you or might have been a challenge as well in attending a smaller school?
Yeah, I feel it's a tricky one, to be honest. I think if you ask any rugby enthusiast at any small school in New Zealand, they will say that, and this is how I thought of it when I was in high school going to Bonnie, it was that I would never get a look in if I wasn't at these big 1A schools, the top tier schools. I thought I'd never get a look in from the coaches. Because like rugby was, once I started rugby, I knew it's what I wanted to do. It's what I wanted to pursue. And at the time, I felt that I wasn't going to get a chance being at botany. And I believe that so much to the point where I think halfway through my schooling time at botany, I decided, okay, I need to move schools. I need to start looking into different opportunities, going to these bigger schools so I can get looked at and get an opportunity. And unfortunately, I say unfortunately, but probably ended up being the best thing that could have happened to me. COVID hit and threw that plan straight out the window, and I was forced to stay at Botany for my last 2 years of high school. And that ended up being the biggest blessing I could ever ask for. I missed out on teams and that, but I think at the end of the day, if you're good enough or if you've worked hard enough, there's always someone watching. There's always going to be someone at your game watching, someone recording, um, and if you're good enough, they'll find you. And I think being at Botany, not saying the competition wasn't as good as obviously the top grade, so I think there was the positives of I probably stood out more being at a second division school, which would make it easier for those scouts, those rugby coaches to identify me, and obviously got my opportunities from there.
Harlyn, you touched on it earlier about Coach Logan and how he made that environment special for you guys. If you looked at the school and the rugby environment in more of a broad sense, and not necessarily just being specific, but what made the botany rugby environment so special to you, and what it was like playing and developing through that system?
Yeah, I think what made it might be a cliche answer, but I think what made the botany environment and the botany team so special was, I think, the brotherhoods. You've by the end of in my final year in year 13, everyone in the team had been training, playing together since year 9. Like we'd all been there since day one. We'd all been there at the first preseason in year 9, and I know there was something special about just getting up to that, working hard together, and getting to that pinnacle together. Um, I think it just made the moment when in our final year when we actually won the title even more special. It just felt like those past 5 years of training, games, losses, wins, all done together, all came together for that one special moment when we eventually took out the title. Yeah, but just to answer your question, it was brotherhoods, just the love for the boys you're playing with next to you.
Awesome. And you actually led straight into my next question, which was talking about you guys being the team that promoted botany into the 1A. Looking back at that now, how does that feel for you as a ex-player and pupil from the school, looking at what legacy you guys left behind and how impactful that's been on the current upcoming generation of players at botany?
Yeah, it's pretty cool to be honest. I felt like everyone knew this, but I think botany was always destined to get into the 1A, get into that top tier competition. A little jealous that I didn't get the opportunity to play in that, but I'm very grateful that can hold the legacy and say the fact that we gave those boys the opportunity to have that relegation game and get their chance to get in the 1A. But it's pretty cool to look at where they are now and where they're going. They're only going to get better from now on. But it's pretty special to say that you're part of the legacy that helped them get to where they are today.
No,
Now,
100%.
just for our listeners, or our viewers, for a school to be at a 1B competition, that means first 15 B division. For a school to move up to your to the 1A, what we call a 1A, you have to win the 1B competition, and then you have to play against the team that finished last in the 1A competition as a promotion relegation game, and you have to win that to actually move into the 1A competition, which Botany has now done due to the legacy that Harlyn and his teammates have left. They've done that now for 2 years, and they're going for a third year. And Harlyn, I can I want to thank you for the legacy you guys left, because it's giving my son the opportunity to play in 1A. And I can just see the growth that's happened in Botany rugby. 3 years ago when my son, 2 years ago when my son started at Botany, when that preseason, I think there was about maybe 80 boys, 90 boys, maybe. And that was from under 14 right through to first 15. And the other day they went to preseason training and there was 188 boys. So that's a legacy that started with you guys, that you guys left, and all your hard work and dedication that you guys put into your season. That's now transcended in years later, giving other boys opportunities to play in the top competition. So I think there's lots of people and lots of parents and lots of boys that would like to thank you guys for what you guys have done for Botany College. But not only that, I think a lot of people associate with sports, and when they look at sports stars and they look at sporty people, they think they're just doing sports. But Harlyn, you were actually head boy of Botany College. Now, why do you think it's important for rugby players or sports or athletes in general, young athletes, to go into leadership positions and challenge themselves and put themselves into leadership positions that's not part of sport? Do you think that's important, and why?
Yeah, I definitely think it's important. I think as a rugby player in schools, in New Zealand, rugby is held so highly. The whole schools, when you think of first 15, I don't want to push aside all the other sports and that, but everyone looks up to the first 15. Everyone looks up to those players. So I think you're in a real crucial position there to not capitalize, but build on that everyone's watching you. So if you go into those leadership roles, I think they listen to you more. You engage everyone much more to the point where when you're putting out these messages that they're going to be listening to what you're going to be saying. I think that was a big reason why. So in not my final year, in year 12, our principal approached me and asked me whether I would consider applying for this role. I hadn't really thought about it, but she mentioned that the school looks up to us boys, and if we can have someone that the school looks up to leading the school, it's gonna benefit everyone, I think. So yeah, I think it's really important to push yourself and put yourself in those difficult positions, because for me, everything I learned as head boy, I'm using every day as a professional rugby player. There's skills you learn in there, such as your public speaking. You'd be surprised how much you have to speak to the public as a rugby player, because rugby players are more than rugby players. They're social icons. People look up to them. They've got fan bases. So having those little skills that you learn from doing these leadership roles, I think become real important when it comes into the more professional and further you get into your career.
I totally agree with you, and I think it teaches you a little bit of discipline outside of the sport as well, and pushing yourself towards things that you're not an expert in, but you have to become an expert and you have to work hard at it so that you do the best of you. So do you think I'm trying to find the words here for young 15-year-old, it's sometimes not I would say, the coolest thing to do to go into leadership positions. So what if you had to give yourself some advice, if you had to go back in time and you had to give yourself advice, what would that be? Do you think your opinion about leadership roles would be different?
I don't think it would be different. I think my opinion of leadership roles, I think for a big thing for me, if I was talking to someone younger or 15, was to keep pushing your comfort zone. I think you just need to constantly keep pushing the barriers of what you're comfortable with, because once you leave school, you're in the big world, and there's there's not a teacher there guiding you, holding your hands. So if you haven't pushed your comfort zone, you're not going to survive in the big world, I would say. So yeah, I think the big thing would be just to keep pushing, doing things you're not comfortable with, because eventually it will come in handy in the long run, I think.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Harlan, I just wanted to ask, you're talking about post school now. What's that transition been like for you, being in the wider training group now, and also in the, correct me if I'm wrong, the Auckland NPC side as well, and also finishing with the 20s last year? What's that whole transition period sort of looked like for you, and what are some challenges you faced along the way?
Yeah, it's been a massive. I think it's been almost just under 3 years now since I've left high school, and I think if you ask any rugby player or any coach, the hardest years of your rugby career are the 2 years after you leave school, because that obviously you're transitioning into professional rugby, and I was lucky enough to be given the opportunity to come out of school to go into an academy program. Being a 1B player at the time, I had a lot to work on, for me, being obviously at 1B school, you don't always have the most resources in terms of like a big team of coaches or facilities. So for me, I really struggled with the skill side of the game. I was still kind of relatively new to the game, so I had so much room to catch up on, and I still feel that to this day. I still feel like I'm catching up on rugby, trying to learn the game properly. But I think what made the transition a little bit easier coming out of high school into the professional environment was my work ethic I learned in school. As a 1B player, I always thought that I had to work twice as hard as the 1A players just to get noticed. And I think if you ask any of those 1A boys that were in the academy spaces, that if you ask them who was the hardest workers, they would always tell you it's the 1B boys. They were always the strongest, the fastest, but just not the most skillful, just because of the resources we were given. So I think, yeah, having that mentality of I have to work harder than all these other boys really helped me coming out of school. But yeah, definitely was not a easy transition. Definitely a lot of times with doubts whether I'm good enough, or whether this life was for me or not. But I think my advice to that was just keep your head down and keep going. You're gonna have so many roadblocks along the way, but I think what defines the players that make it and that don't make it is I think how you take on those roadblocks, if you hit one and just give up, or whether you hit it, learn from it, and keep on pushing.
Awesome. And just to correct myself there, Harlan plays for North Harbour, everyone. So just so I can get all the Harbour fans off my back, in case made a mistake there about him playing for Auckland. He plays for North Harbour, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, that's a tricky one. Depends who you ask. I played, be given the opportunity last year to be loaned out to North Harbour to play for the NPC season. But I'm currently signed with Auckland Rugby for going forward at this stage. So it's a tricky one. Depends who you ask.
And it can be a sensitive topic. It can be a sensitive topic.
Yeah, Battle of the Bridge.
Battle of the Bridge.
Yeah. Harlan, I also just wanted to ask, with you representing the under 20s last year in the Rugby Championship and the Junior World Cup, what was the moment like when you found out, whether it was a phone call or you possibly saw it online or received an email, when you found out you were going to be representing the country at a national level? What was that moment like for you?
I don't think words can describe how happy I was. It was a clear goal for me. Leaving school, I didn't make New Zealand schools or any of those big teams. I barely made Blues under 18s at the time. I think I was on the bench. But coming out of school, that was the big goal. For me, that was whether I was going to make it or not. But after even coming out of school, like signing a professional academy contract, you think, okay, I've made it at this point. It's going to be easy road from here. I'm just going to keep on cracking away, keep on making all these teams, and then eventually, hopefully, get the opportunity to make NZ20s. But that didn't happen. I came out of high school, and the first team I had the opportunity to make was Blues under 20s, so our regional under 20s team, and I didn't make it. I didn't make the wider squad for that, so that was pretty disheartening. But like what I said about those roadblocks, I just put my head down, learned from the feedback I got given, and just worked twice as hard, and then obviously the opportunity came around to make Blues 20s again. And I think for me, it was not living up to chance. I think that's a big saying. I think Sonny Bill said it. I'm not living anything up to chance. Don't give the reason for the coaches not to pick you. So, put my head down, worked hard, performed well enough at Blues 20s, and obviously was fortunate enough to get that phone call and be named in the New Zealand under 20s. And it was funny. I was on the bus heading to uni because I was studying at the time, and it was a bit awkward, but just staying up yelling and screaming on the bus as all these uni students are half asleep with their headphones at 7 a.m. in the morning catching the bus, and there's this big dude in the middle of it screaming and yelling. Just I can't describe how much joy I felt, and even more so, giving the phone call back to my aunt and uncle, letting them know that I'd made the team. It's a special feeling. Special feeling.
What was their reaction?
Yeah, it was. Oh, my aunt. I was just crying on the phone with my auntie. It was a special moment, and then obviously I gave my uncle the phone call as well, and he was real proud. It's those are the moments you dream of, being able to call your family and to share the good news. Because obviously it's not just my hard work that's gotten me here; it's also their hard work, their hours of driving me to trainings, packing my lunches, getting me up in the morning. It's a team effort to get to those positions like that.
Now, you got selected for the under-20s there, and then the first thing you guys did was you went to South Africa to play in the Rugby Championship. Now, what was that experience like? Because you guys went in and you won the championship, but what was the whole experience of traveling to South Africa and then playing in this Rugby Championship and winning it? What was that experience like for you?
Yeah, it was different to anything I'd ever experienced. I've only left the country so many times, and I think that's just to Australia. So to start with, you're going to a totally different part of the earth, experiencing things you don't see every day in here in New Zealand, different lifestyles and that. But then also you're traveling with the best boys in the country at your age level, which is it's awesome. Those the boys were amazing. I think a hard bit for me traveling was to start off with, I just had a bit of imposter syndrome. I was still stuck in that mindset of, I've come from this 1B school. What am I doing here? Why do I deserve to be playing with these boys that was at the time, rugby in high school was televised. So I knew all these boys. I knew who they were. These guys are all big superstars already. And I was just little 1B rugby player that no one had ever heard of, So there was a bit of imposter syndrome there. But, being in that team environment with those, because we were with those boys for months, just growing those bonds. And by the time when we got over to South Africa, we were brothers. So that definitely made the trip a lot easier. And once we got to over to South Africa, it was, gun blazing. Had a little hiccup in the first game. We drew with Australia. That was our first time playing together as a team. But then from there, I think we just built as a team and obviously gained to that final against South Africa. Some big boys in that team. They were massive. We were definitely the smallest team in the competition, which is a bit surprising, but Yeah, I think for those who watched the final, it wasn't just a easy sailing through that last game. We're 19-0 down in the first 15 minutes, and managed to crawl our way back. Got a few tries along the way, which was pretty
And it was
cool.
with a red card as well, right?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
the last 20 minutes or so, I believe we got a red card, and I think we got another yellow card. So it was, yeah, definitely not a easy, stress-free game. The South Africans really gave it to us. But hearing that final whistle blow, and being up on the scoreboard, I think that's one of the highlights of my rugby career so far, I would say.
You're being very modest, because one of the tries you scored was actually a scorcher. It was right in the corner. You dove to the outside and put the ball back in. It was an amazing try. So you're being quite modest when you say you were lucky to score a few tries. That was an amazing try, that particular one in the corner. And we were here shouting and screaming for you and on the TV. So that was an amazing try, just between you and me.
Yeah, that was an awesome moment. I don't think everyone gets the opportunity to say they scored one try, let alone scoring a hat trick against such a strong South African team. That was a pretty cool experience.
We want to take you, and then a couple of months later, you guys went to the World Cup, and then you had an amazing World Cup journey. And then in the finals, you met the same South African team. But what was that going to Georgia? What was that like for you guys? And how did you experience the whole World Cup campaign?
Yeah, so we actually ended up going. We were in our World Cup last year. Sorry, it was in Italy, and once again, like didn't get to travel too much, but going to somewhere on the other side of the world is, once again, words can't describe how Italy was awesome. I'll put it that way. Italy was such an awesome experience. Amazing architecture, amazing food. Bloody hot. It was. I think our first week there was a heat wave in our first game.
You guys were having the 20-minute water breaks, eh? In between.
Yeah. Mandatory water breaks. Yeah, that was a new experience. But playing in 40 degrees weather was rough. But outside of rugby, we got plenty of opportunities to travel the country. Went to Venice. That was amazing. Got very, very lost there. It's a floating island, and every corner looks the same. We try to use Google Maps to get out, and no luck. Eventually got out, but things like that is, it was such an awesome experience and awesome time spending with the brothers. We've been together for about 3 months at that point, all together. So yeah, it's pretty cool to say travel the world with your best mates and your brothers.
But when you talk to players that's already retired, that's the things that they remember. Sports, I think, what people forget. Yes, sports is a competitive job, and you have to win. You have to put the results in. But as a player, the results will fade. The results at some stage will fade. But the memories you make and teammates and traveling together and doing stuff on flights together, that's the stuff that you'll remember. And that's, I think, where sports can also teach you a lot, eh? They teach you a lot of skills for outside of rugby or outside of sports. Because, for example, rugby, you have to travel with your team, and like you said, you've been together for 3-4 months, and sometimes you get irritated, but you have to check your emotions. And the same things in workplace. So it's a lot of skills that you can transfer along the way. Now, I see you laughing. Can you maybe, if you want to, give an example of where you got a bit frustrated or a bit angry or a bit lonely?
And tell us about your favorite roommate in quotations, or least favorite roommate.
Yeah. So obviously, I was fortunate enough to make the NZ20s team, but I was also fortunate enough to make it with my best friend. His name's Randall Baker. We both me and Randall attended Botany Downs Secondary College. So, it was a big thing, two 1B boys making the national under-20s team. It's quite a big thing, and I was I was fortunate enough to have Randall as my roommate in both South Africa and Italy, and it's quite a long time to spend with the same person, and I think I can say at times I got very irritated with Randall. Especially I think the hard thing for Randall was he was actually one that was always getting the cards. In the very first game in Italy, he got red carded, ended up actually being stood down for the rest of the tournament. And to put it simply, Randall put his frustrations on me, and he made it his living. He made his goal to make my life hell. Wow.
So you were playing wife at home, making sure the family's stable.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, he was. Yeah, it was. Oh, some PTSD from those moments, but yeah, no, that's outside of that, nothing major. But yeah, just Randall being a pain in my backside during those months we were away, I'd say. But love that dude.
And just touching on the Junior World Cup, Harlan, you guys came in there. Apart from the hiccup with Aussie, technically you guys were going in there undefeated, and then worked your guys' way through the tournament and put up some really good performances. And even though you didn't necessarily get the result in the end, it was still, I loved the team's mentality and always staying in the fight and never giving up, despite how the game may have been flowing there in the final. But how did you as an individual deal with the disappointment leading up to that? Because you'd spend so much time and hard work with that squad, and then falling short in that last final. How did you as an individual and in the squad as a whole deal with that disappointment?
Yeah, I think what made it even harder for us is was we had genuine belief that we were going to win it. Not in a cocky way, more in the way of like just we had belief in our coaches, belief in one another, belief in the system, belief in our game plan, and belief in the players. We went into that final believing that we had the opportunity to do something that a New Zealand 20s team hasn't done in the past 7 or 8 years, I believe. That's how long it's been since I think we last won the Junior World Cup. There was a lot of pressure on us as well from New Zealand, the media, and the rest of the world. And obviously, falling short, it was quite hard. Spending the last 4 months working up to this moment and just falling short was quite hard and quite hard to deal with. And I think how we got over that as a team was just getting close with each other. After the game had finished, after the game, we had about 12 hours before we were on the plane again, heading home, and probably not see these boys for until we next meet in a rugby game or something. So, it was really getting close to each other and celebrating what we had already achieved, And it had been 6 years since we last made a final. So, just celebrating the small wins, although we've loved to have a World Cup to add to that. Celebrating the small wins with the team, I think that's really important. And also just learning and, just moving on.
And then just touching back on, you mentioned it earlier, where you had those doubts when you were this is tracking back all the way back to high school, in the middle of your schooling career, where you were at 1B and you had those thoughts just prior to COVID about transitioning to a 1A school. Did you, this can be recent in your schooling career, but did you ever have doubts where you possibly looked at rugby as not necessarily a option for you as to become a professional, or would you say that it's the complete opposite and you backed yourself all the way, that you knew that's where I wanted to be one day?
Yeah, I definitely had doubts, and I definitely still have doubts. I'm still a young rugby player, and I think I'm always gonna have doubts. Um, I'm, but my mentality is I'll never give up. Um, I can have these doubts along the way. I doubt whether I'm good enough, whether I deserve to be in this position, but that's never gonna stop me trying. Um, I think my biggest struggles right now, or still to this day, but when I was first coming out of school was, you compare yourself to everyone. I think that's a big thing in rugby. You're always comparing yourself to your competition. You know, looking at these players, I remember in my first year out of school, it was um when I talk about my first opportunity to make Blues 20s, I missed out. There were some boys that had same age as me, and the first year out of school they made NZ 20s, and then I'm sitting there thinking, well, they've made it at my age already, and I'm here not even being able to make my regional team. Then, like, what's the point? Like, why am I doing all this if I can't even crack the small team? And it's the moments like those when you can either obviously decide to give up or decide to put your head down and work twice as hard, three times as hard, work as hard as it takes to put yourself in that position where you can get selected. So yeah, moments like those, I think, what define who's going to be a good rugby player or not.
Do you you're talking about setbacks and you're talking about how you compare yourself to other players and that they've made it now. And when you experience those setbacks, I know you said you're working harder than anybody else and you never give up and stuff like that, but is there people around you that you surround yourself with that you can share those disappointments with and talk to them about what to do next? Is there anybody do you go for advice during those setback times?
Yeah, definitely. For me, like I've already mentioned them before, it's my auntie and uncle. Um, they obviously they've been my guardians for the last 10 years, and anytime um something's happened or something's not gone my way, they've always been the first person I go talk to. I think the big thing is talking to people, laying it, not holding it in, not letting it build up to become something bigger than it needs to be. So for me, it's always been just talking to my aunt and uncle, and they help me, they guide me in the right direction of terms of where to go. They're the ones that tell me you just need to put your head down, Harlan. You need to keep training and yeah, give it your all. Yeah, they're pretty much my backbone, I'd say.
Now, I know your uncle and auntie, and what I appreciate about them, I think, and what you appreciate as well, they won't lie to you. If you did something that you shouldn't be doing, they'll tell you and say, Harlan, you didn't make this because you did this. And
Yeah,
I think for young athletes, it's really important to not just keep people around that will say all the nice things to you,
yeah,
but you need to have people around you that loves you and cares for you as a person, but they are not scared to give it to you honestly and give it to you straight and say, you know what? You're not the victim here, or maybe get over yourself a little bit. This is what you need to do. I think for young athletes, it's really important to keep people around that gives them perspective on
yeah,
where they are and what they're doing.
definitely. Yeah, that's definitely it. Just for example, my uncle he's my biggest critic. He After games, he'll, like as you said, he'll give it to me straight. He'll say that was rubbish, or should have done this, should have done that. But as well as being my biggest critic, he's also my biggest supporter. He's at every game. He watches every game. We talk about rugby all the time, but yeah, no, definitely having that person that just gives it to you straight. I think that's real important. You need someone in your life that isn't afraid to tell you when you're on the wrong or where you need to
Yeah.
improve.
Now, Hannah, we've been talking a lot about coaches and people around you that supported you to get to where you are at this stage. But for a sports person, it comes down to what you do as a person and how hard you work. And you've already mentioned your attitude towards you won't give up and you'll just work harder, put your head down and work harder than everybody else. Now, for a professional sportsman, can you just take us through your daily routine, what it takes to become a professional sportsman? Because a lot of people, they only see the glamour and they see people running around on the field, but they don't see the sacrifices off the field. So can you just give us a little bit of insight to your daily routine and what it looks like?
Yeah, sure. I think for me, with my daily routine, it's nothing fancy. It's just nailing key things for me, and that's getting my nutrition right, getting my sleep right, and starting the day like that. So for me, it's where I am right now, obviously currently with the Blues. For me, it would be getting up extra early. So currently that would probably be about, I would say between 5:30 and 6. And that just gives me enough time to eat my breakfast, get my stuff together, and head to training. Just because if you know Auckland, it's quite a bit of traffic. You know, it's a real important thing not to be late. And if that means you have to be half an hour early to miss the traffic, then yeah, it's a big thing. That's a big thing my uncle made real clear when I was young, was never be late to anything, because once again, like I mentioned before, there's always someone watching, and those are little things that coaches look outside of rugby to see whether this player's committed or this player's giving it his all. So I think, yeah, that's definitely how my day starts, getting in to training as early as possible. And from there, it's just going with the flow, going through my training day, making sure I get my nutrition, making sure I'm hydrated. And then coming home, I'll do my little training review, watch my clips, get that out of the way. And then it's important to just put rugby to the side for the rest of the night. Or then rugby, because then rugby will take over your life if that's all you do. So I make it real clear to, once I'm finished my review, once I've finished my footage, once I'm finished my feedback and everything, I'll put my notebook to the side and either focus on my family, focus on my hobbies, take my dog for a walk, or just anything non-rugby related, speak to mates. Yeah, I think it's real good to make sure you have that clear balance that, because like at the end of the day, we're more than rugby players. Well, we're people that play rugby.
Yep.
Rugby doesn't define us. You know, they make it real clear in our rugby environments that having something outside of rugby to keep us going, you know, having that alternative to rugby, because, you know, rugby's not forever. There's injuries all the time. You know, full line there, my career could end this weekend at my next game with a career-ending injury. I have to have something back up. That's why I've studied at uni. I've got my backup plan, and yeah, things like that. But yeah, so that's pretty much my day. Get my nutrition in, focus on anything but rugby, and then making sure I get a nice early sleep. Sleep's really important, you know.
No.
Make sure I get at least 9 hours of sleep, because, you know, wrecking the body every single day, you know, you need to give your body that time to recover.
Now, for our younger viewers, teenagers, can you just explain why sleep is that important? Because for teenagers, as you know, sleep takes a back seat. So can you just explain why sleep is that important to you?
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because up until I remember being in high school and just, you know, sitting on my phone all night. It was that was my routine, you know, going to bed, going straight on my phone. Doom scrolling, yeah, that's it. Just doom scrolling all night, and then waking up in the morning and just feeling sluggish and not ready for the day. And I guess being in a professional environment where rugby is your job, you can't afford to be like that. You can't afford to have mornings where you're so tired because you've spent the whole night gaming or the whole night doom scrolling. So yeah, I think in the position I'm in now and other players, and I think you can't afford to not fully commit to something like sleep. You know, obviously, like I said, that's when your body's recovering from the day. That's when your brain gets a rest. So, you know, so important. It's such a big thing for me, getting enough sleep.
Now it's
I'm so glad you said that. I'm so glad you're saying that, because I wish my son was listening, because I wish he was listening to this. But no, that's so important. Sorry, Matthew, I interrupted you. Sorry.
no, it's all good. I just wanted to touch on. It's funny that Helgard mentioned your daily routine. Is on my For You page. You've popped up a few times with your daily routine videos, which is quite cool.
Yeah.
I love seeing that the background of players and all the hard work that goes into and preparation, because the game on the weekend's only 80 minutes, and then there's all those hours you put in prior to the week building up. But what do you think, or how significant do you think it is for the younger generation coming through to have that social media following and backing? Because I think it is important to a certain degree for that self promotion and to really build a community that both can support you, but you can work in the opposite way, and you can have people and critics be at your doorstep. But the help you provide to younger athletes and guidance you offer in your community is awesome, man. But yeah, I just want to get your opinion on that.
Yeah, it's definitely a tricky one. Obviously, everyone knows about like the bad side of social media and what that does to people and stuff like that. But for me, it's I've always wanted to share these experiences, because I think not too many rugby players have shared what it is to be a rugby player. Besides, obviously, playing that, as you said, those 80 minutes on the field, I think they have shared what it takes. Like, obviously, no one sees those long hours of trainings that we do every day. No one sees the physiotherapy that we have to go to. No one sees the recovery. No one sees the amount of food we have to get down in a day just to
Yeah,
maintain weight.
your wheat bix you're absurd, man. You're carrying about 50% of the income at the moment.
Yeah, I wish they would sponsor me already. I've been trying to sort that out, but we'll keep working on it. Yeah, but like, yeah, as I say, people don't see how hard it is to um, and maintain this lifestyle. So I think it was a cool opportunity for me to share that with the public and share that with younger boys wanting to, like make rugby their job, giving them the insight of what it takes to get yourself to this position. Um, and then I guess also for me, putting myself out there, just trying to create opportunities for myself. Rugby's changing. It used to just be a sport, but now it's, as I've said before, you're a public figure now in the professional stage. So I think also just being able to control your personal brand, control how people see you, and not just leave it to obviously the news outlets and the papers to describe who you are. I think giving yourself an opportunity to tell everyone who you are from yourself, I guess. Yeah, but then also being social media is hard. I think you are putting yourself out there. You're putting yourself out there to be scrutinized, to be judged, and it's
Double-edged
a
sword,
tricky.
eh?
Yeah, definitely. Oh, I've already had my experiences with the goods and bads of social media. Obviously I'm putting myself out there. That means anyone can see that, and even um my videos have been played during team meetings at the Blues, and that's a little bit like not embarrassing, but like you have to stay wary that like everything you put online it's public knowledge. It'll be there forever. Someone's always going to see it. So just making sure you're putting stuff out there that obviously for me is building on my brand, building on my public image in a positive way.
No, you're definitely doing
So
that,
it's
mate. I definitely agree that you're definitely putting a positive light on what it takes to be a professional rugby player and providing kids education that uh, they can't get anywhere else.
It's interesting to say that you're trying to promote your brand and who you are to to the public. Now, with our company, SportCirqls, what we do is we provide a platform for athletes to set up their profiles, to actually put up their daily routines, put up their videos, put up their. But also, what we're saying is, if you can build up a profile or CV where people can see your everyday life and what you're doing and how you're committed to the sport, it provides a holistic view of the person, not just stats or not just who you played for, but it provides a holistic picture of who you really are, and that is more attractive to coaches than anything else. They don't want to sign a player who might be really talented and skillful, but he doesn't work hard, doesn't want to train, comes late to meetings, doesn't want to put up the hard yard. So what we're trying to do is to help young athletes to promote themselves in the best and most positive way they can. So we even have tools on our site where you can do testing, where people can see how to communicate with you, what's your bad habits, what's your good habits, all sorts of things that you can do on our platform. We can even, you talked about sponsorship earlier with Whitpix, and I wish they could, they would sponsor you. And on our platform, we provide companies to link up, a space for companies to link up with individual players, and you can but then sell off your digital real estate and then get sponsorship through that, and then promote the companies through your profile. And you as an athlete have the control on who you accept or not. So that builds your brand, and you can associate with certain companies and certain brands, and you can say, listen, no, I don't want to associate with this brand, but I want to more associate with these companies. So we're trying to build a 360-degree solution for players to actually build themselves, but become financial independent, and then get into the right programs as well. So it was just, I thought it's an opportunity to just tell you what we're doing, because it was quite interesting when you said about building your brand and making sure that people see the narrative that you want to put out. You want to control the narrative, what you would want to put out. Matthew, do you want to go ahead with your questions?
I just have two more. The one was, what are your goals for this upcoming season, Harlyn?
Yeah, so this is my first year being in the Blues environment on a full-time basis. I think the easy answer is to make my debut. I think that's an easy goal just to put out there. The other goal is just to, being in this type of professional environment is just to take everything in. I'm a young player there, staying next to people like Caleb Clark, Dalton, and all those like big superstar young players. It's, I think, making sure that I take that opportunity to learn, feed off them, and just take it all in. Be a sponge, soak all the information up. So I'd say those are my two main goals at this stage, short term.
Awesome. And then just a final one was, what would your advice be to maybe some athletes that maybe come from a similar upbringing there in botany through that system? Obviously, they're in the 1A now. But what would your advice be to young schoolboys that may not necessarily get those opportunities right away, and what they probably need to be a bit patient and weigh up their options and keep grinding before they'll actually see the fruits of their labor?
Yeah, I think my advice, and I use it every day, and I'll say it's what makes me who I am at this point, is resilience. Resilience to just keep on pushing, keep on going. I unfortunately, growing up, I was brought up in a household of drug and alcohol abuse, with my mother and father, and I think from there, just learning, like, just away from the rugby field, obviously, but learning to never give up, even when I wasn't handed the best circumstances. Just like botany, like, not handed the best circumstances, not handed and put in the best position, but to keep working, keep grinding, I think I would say. So yeah, definitely resilience is what I'd tell them, and also I think it just comes down to how bad you want it. It comes down to whether you're willing to put in those extra hours, whether you're willing to put in those extra trainings, your diet, your sleep. Like, if you can end your, if you get to the point where you end your career and say, there's nothing more I can do, then I think you can end it happily. But yeah, that's the main thing for me right now. If I'll be happy knowing that I've put my all out there. I've left it all out there. And if it doesn't work out, then I can survive that.
Awesome.
Harlyn, I would just like to thank you from the bottom of our heart, and I think from Matthew's side as well. It's been a privilege having you on our podcast, and I honestly believe I got to know you a little bit in the last few months and stuff like that. And what I've seen of you is you're a humble, hardworking young man, and I truly believe that what you set your mind on, you'll achieve. And we will be following your career, and hopefully soon enough you'll be putting on the All Blacks jersey. And and I just wanted to thank you for the great example you are for young athletes out there. Personally, to my son, like I mentioned earlier, he follows you quite a bit, and just the way you interact with the younger kids as well while you're out there, and it's just amazing to see. And I really want to thank you for the role model you are, and just the person you are, and stay humble. But we'll be following your career, and thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Nah, sweet. Thank you very much for having me. I had a great time.
If you're looking to get discovered, or for pathways in sport, or to set up your sports CV, a place to fundraise or manage a sport, go to SportCirqls.com. Sign in or download the SportCirqls app from the App Store or the Google Play Store. If you like our content, please subscribe and follow us. SportCirqls, your journey, your story, your future.